I look ratchet right now. Honestly, let's just get right into it. Basically, I don't know if I should use this or not. Growing up, I used to love watching anime. It felt like a reality outside of your own reality. It was just something different compared to what you would see on like the Disney, like Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, like cartoon style. It was just so fascinating to me. It pulled me in at such a young age. Not only have I learned so much from it, it's also just helped expand my creativity. You know what? I'm not gonna use this. One thing I did notice was how even though anime comes from Japan, it was cool to see it was getting ideas from outside of Japan, or the normal modern Japan lifestyle. One thing I did notice was all the Western and hip-hop influences in some shows, and it just really stood out to me. There have been a couple of shows who do this, but one of the shows that stood out to me the most was Samurai Champloo. Samurai Champloo had a really big hip-hop and Western influence throughout the entire series. I just want to say real quick before I get started that there's gonna be a ton of spoilers. And this show's been out since like 2000. This show's been out since like 2004. Like, you literally had like so many years. I'm not gonna do the math. You literally had like so many freaking years to watch it. So sorry, but if you haven't watched it yet, I really do encourage you to, because the show's like so good. I've seen it like about like 5 times, 5, 6, I don't know. I've seen it a bunch of times. I just always go back to it because of what I'm about to talk about. And a quick summary of the show: Samurai Champloo is basically the story about, sorry if I don't say these names perfect. English is kind of my first language, so anyways, so Mugen and Jean basically accompany Fu to help her find the samurai who smells the sunflowers. So Fu knows who she's looking for, but Mugen and Jean don't really know, but they're just helping her out. But the show is like honestly so good, and that's like a really quick summary about it. So the show takes place in the Edo period of Japan, just a few years after the Shinkaku period. And the show references it a lot. Not only do they mention that they're in the Edo period, but they have like various like backdrops, talk about different figures, different artworks from around that time, and it also discusses historical events. So you're like honestly like really honestly learning. I learned so much, and they're still like committing to the story. While watching, it's completely obvious that they are pulling from Western and hip-hop culture, even though the show was dated back in the Edo period. From the breakdancing to graffiti. The baseball game. It's just even all the way up to the character's personality and just the music being used. It's so genius on how he took on this show. They'll even add like subtle name drops from famous people. When Fu was getting kidnapped by this famous Yukinoe painter, Hishikawa Mononoru, even comparing him to Vincent van Gogh. They were even playing against Alexander Cartwright and other Americans during a baseball game because they were trying to start a war with Japan. Amazing! Even though the story was set in Japan, they didn't rely only on its culture, but it was very represented throughout. Like, even though they pulled from like the Western era, like you didn't see people like on their phone, you know, or like on a computer. Like, yeah, they pulled ideas, but they weren't going out of the era. But like not with the music too much. So Watanabe, he really loves hip-hop. He was using hip-hop as a tool for rethinking creativity, specifically sampling to imagine characters, premises, and world settings. He made the show solely for hip-hop influence. He wanted the characters to represent countercultural and wanted to choose music to reflect it. Pretty much rethinking samurais using hip-hop music, and using hip-hop music primarily as the background element. Kondry said a really good point. The director chose to use hip-hop as a way of thinking about cultural production. While it was still taking place during the Edo period, it was still like throwing in the Western influences and the modern jazz cultural ideas. The show has a funny and extremely graphic way of taking you through this like journey the 3 main characters are going through. So what the director did, he's made the characters all have different personalities, like way different personalities between Fu, Mugen, and Jean, all with different backgrounds. Fu was a very young girl. Her mother unfortunately died, but before she died, her father abandoned them, just out of nowhere. Around the time she met up with Mugen and Jean, she was a waitress at a tea house. But it's kind of crazy how she even got them to travel with her in the first place, because none of them knew each other before they even met up. It was just all by chance. In the first episode, she was getting attacked by a group of samurais, which led Mugen to help. But in the end of all that, both Mugen and Jean ended up getting arrested. Jean just happened to walk in and started fighting at the same time.
You're in the middle of something. Pardon me.
Hey, are you one of those so-called badasses? Better yet!
Helped save them from an execution because they were gonna be executed because the group of samurais were high power. So she really like convinced them to be her bodyguard in such a weird, like, they didn't have to wait, but they did. Next we have Jean. He's a student of the Kenjutsu style of fighting. He ended up killing his master, which led him to leave and himself fighting like the other two. He's more of a calm guy, not really a talker. He's very skillful and more of a traditional fighter, unlike Mugen. But Jean always continues to find ways to improve his skills, wanting to battle like the best of the best, like no chumps. Finally, we have Mugen, and he's honestly the one that was like really influenced by like hip-hop culture. He's more of like the reckless one in the group, complete opposite of Jean. Mugen's very vulgar.
I'm not letting you get away again.
He doesn't really care about anybody but like booze, women, money, winning, and himself. He makes his own rules, in which takes him out of the traditional style of fighting. He doesn't abide to anyone and will literally kill anybody who gets in his way. Mugen's really petty because he will literally like pick a fight over small things that aren't even that big of an issue. And that's what gets him in trouble. You know, his fighting style is very reckless and uncommon, but he's very skillful on his feet. When it came to Mugen's character design, Watanabe really wanted him to be like a rapper who acts like a bad guy. He was honestly the hardest character to develop. Watanabe said from himself, but the way Mugen acts is relatively based on conviction. While watching this show, you can tell that his fighting style is based off all forms of martial arts and from breakdancing. The way he fights always flows with the tempo of the music like a breakdancer. And that's exactly what Watanabe wanted with this character. Many people have compared his fighting styles to that of capoeira, a Brazilian dance martial art. Capoeira has been out for a long time and it's pretty freaking cool. And you can see it, like when you're watching him fight, it's just so freaking soothing. Watanabe really wanted the focus to be on him breakdancing. He's fighting in such a natural flow and it's so freaking cool. Okay, so back to the topic. The show isn't only about the storyline, but it's also about the influence it has. Shinichiro Watanabe has really created a name for himself. He was also the director for the popular anime Cowboy Bebop and Space Daddy. Watanabe is a director who likes to focus on mixing genre and having a narrative design. He's worked on many stuff, but like these three really helped him. When it came to the music in the show, Watanabe wanted to work with 4 producers, 4 people who actually he loved before he even worked with them. Please don't get mad if I mess up these names. I'm really gonna mess up these names. Which was Tsuchi, Fat John, Force of Nature, and Nujabes. The process was a lot of sampling, cutting, and the mixing of genres. It was pulling from different genres like hip-hop, jazz, pop, and even soul elements. Even while watching the episodes, he would add like that little like scratch sound DJs make on their turntable.
Samurai Champloo.
You know, even though they didn't have that back in the Edo period. But it was really cool. The vision he had with the music and the show was super creative. He wanted each episode to have like this strong musical theme, and he organized each episode into an album. There's a total of 20 tracks for both seasons, like all together, and he did it in the style of a vinyl. So it's like a 2-side. One side season 1, the other side season 2. During an interview Watanabe had, when asked about what inspired him to do hip-hop, Watanabe said, first of all, sampling, In pop music these days, there's a lot of sampling of phrases from old jazz and soul records, placing the needle just in the right spot using cut and paste and mixing them with the beat of today. In a way, they created a new kind of music. I wanted to make a period piece using samurai, which is a style that has been around in Japan a long time with a lot of classics. I wanted to use these classics not to copy them, but to sample them. And it was during this 2005 interview. When it came to the music too, there was just so much creativity with it. Not only the table scratch transitions, but even the opening song is a perfect example of it.
Short like an angel, a samurai sword, the mental blade cut through flesh and bone. No, my mind's at peace. The word out of order, missing in the heat. Night gets colder. Oh yes, I have to find my path. No less walk on earth, water and fire. The elements compose Amanda. Opens my motor, so rhyme is amalgam. Steel packed tight, a micro chip on my arm by the side of all pro. The ultimate reward is dining out of war that on with the times and wars with no.
Battle Cry had all the different elements of sampling, remixes. It just screamed hip hop. Nujabes was the producer behind it, and Shing02, I think that's how you say it, was rapping. Well, more in a spoken word. The song is more of street poetry, and it's in English. As Nujabes was the one who produced it, he sent the beat to Shing02, and the lyrics come from this samurai background in his ancestry. And he also had a friend who was a swordsmith in Japan. The lyrics just came out natural, and it's being played over these really cool visuals of all the main characters. And as mentioned before, Watanabe really wanted to make the soundtrack into a storyline. I'm gonna mess this up. A juxtaposition of hip-hop and Edo period culture. He really wanted to achieve a mix of this hip-hop and Edo period culture. One, it creates a cool new lens in which to engage with history, and two, it presents a loaded parallel between the Edo period and the modern day, comparing the changing culture attitudes in a post-war society and the effects of trade and foreign culture to nurture an explosion in creativity in arts and music. Ending track was also produced by Nujabes. It's more of a beautiful, soft song, and it's in Japanese. And with the ending of it, he's using these visuals, and it's pretty much just foods. It's just pretty much her reminiscing to her childhood, so she's the main focus of the ending. It's kind of meant to tug at your heartstrings in a way because of how beautifully it was done. Lo-fi hip-hop played the biggest role in the genre of what he was using. Sadly, he's no longer with us, but he's definitely made an impact with lo-fi hip-hop. Lo-fi pretty much borrows from many genres: jazz, hip-hop, soul, classical, dance. In a simpler way, it's a sampling of mostly older songs and then just throwing a little flair into it. Whether it's some white noise, a hip-hop beat, some drums, or having that static audio. A lot of the producers pulled from other songs, clearly for the lo-fi of the soundtrack. But with Nujabes, there are so many examples, but two of the main ones that I found that were also extremely popular from the show was Miss Slime and Aryan Dance. Miss Slime features sampling from Here's That Rainy Day. It's a pretty old song. And Aryan Dance features The Lamp Is Low. The lamp is low. Another older song. And with lo-fi, you don't really have to do that much with it. It's not as technical. It's not as over the top like an EDM song, especially because most of the tracks are just on loop. The simplicity makes it so full. The vibe is usually very mellow and nostalgic. It's just so calming. It feels like your soul is just being lifted, And Nujabes really did his thing. He really helped with this expansion of it. And being from Japan, Nujabes really loves soul and jazz, and he's always wanted to incorporate both of them together. And this was the result of it. As you can hear, it sounds amazing. Okay, so in the end, Samurai Champloo is a really good example of cultural influence. The director, Shinshiro Watanabe, look him up, honestly. Talented man. So basically the director, Watanabe, he incorporated so much hip-hop and Western influence throughout the show, this modern time, but then it wasn't. And the show also really did help with the growth of lo-fi and the attention that it brought to it.
Chew it, teen.